The people who tried hardest to hurt Ukraine and make it lose might actually now make them win.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
A bullshit?
There's a recent twist in the story of the war in Ukraine and an incredible irony that I want you to hold on to. The people who tried hardest to hurt Ukraine and make it lose might actually now make them win. To see what I mean, let's go through three things. What Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the MAGA crowd have been trying to do to undermine Ukraine, why it was all bogus, and how, inadvertently, unintentionally, and ironically, by being so bad at it, they may have had it all boomerang back on them. First, go back to February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine in a blatant, unforgivable attack, and Donald Trump goes on conservative radio and says,
This is genius.
actually, not once, 3 times that week. Genius, savvy, smart. That wasn't a slip. It was a standing ovation for a war crime. Meanwhile, his future VP, J.D. Vance, made his own position clear, saying, I gotta be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. And he tried to back up that noble gut reaction with what he called a math argument, writing in the New York Times that America could never provide the funds or materials that Ukraine needed, that doing so would dangerously deplete our stockpiles and leave America helpless, and that it was pointless to try helping out because they were doomed, which I guess means let them die. Profiles and courage. It's been a long 4 years since then, and along the way, Trump and Vance and the MAGA rest of them have been trying to do the 5 Ds of dodgeball.
Now, 5 Ds of dodgeball. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
Every excuse they could come up with and every maneuver they could think of to try to undermine Ukraine and undermine our NATO allies in Europe who might otherwise help Ukraine. They withheld aid. They picked fights with NATO and directly threatened NATO countries like Denmark. And they set up the famous ambush of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky at the White House.
Your country's in big trouble. You're not winning this. Let me tell you, you don't have the cards.
And when none of that worked, they resorted to just flat out parroting Vladimir Putin's talking points, saying Ukraine started the war, they're equally to blame, and that Zelensky is a dictator. But of course, all of that was bullshit. Clearly, the idea that Ukraine can't hold off Russia has been proven false by the last 4 years of virtual standstill. The idea that Ukraine is somehow to blame is, of course, so far beneath contempt, it doesn't even bear addressing. And if that's not obvious to you, allow me to say, Zdravствуйте, comrade, God the Allah. As for the argument that supplying Ukraine with military ordnance was dangerously hurting our own stockpiles, I'll let former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger take that one.
We're talking about the fact that our weapons stocks have been diminished. It's not true. The stuff that we actually gave to Ukraine were things like 155 shells, some of our older Patriot interceptors, old ATACMs, ones that were expiring anyway, that were probably going to have to be thrown out of the inventory. We did not give Ukraine cruise missiles, so don't give me that. If we say we gave Ukraine $1 billion, it's actually $1 billion to purchase new stuff for our stocks. But what that did is it allowed us to refresh our stocks, and also it increased our industrial capacity.
Exactly. And to be fair, there have been plenty of Republicans who haven't bought into any of this from the beginning. And they've grown so tired with these weak MAGA arguments that this week they banded together to force the U.S. House of Representatives to vote on a bill to deliver new aid to Ukraine over the objections of House Speaker and MAGA sock puppet Mike Johnson. Which brings us to the twist, because as you can see, all of these maneuvers have been so ham-handed, so incompetent, that they've actually failed in a particularly brilliant way for Ukraine and the people around the world who support them. After that Oval Office ambush, Germany decided it was a breaking point. The European Union started supplying the assistance that America wouldn't, with what looks like an extra $106 billion on its way soon. And more important, Ukraine didn't fold. They innovated. They made themselves into experts in wielding low-cost drones that have upended the reality of modern battlefields. Ukraine's drone pilots killed or seriously injured nearly 250,000 Russian soldiers last year and knocked out 30,000 heavy weapons like tanks or artillery, according to Substacker Andrew Sullivan. This year, Ukraine is killing or wounding up to 35,000 Russian soldiers a month. Ukraine produced 4 million drones last year, and it's aiming for 7 million this year. And their drone strikes on refineries and ports have crushed Russia's ability to export oil. Ukraine not only has the most modern tactics and force posture in Europe, it's now, if anything, more of a strategic military asset to Europe than the other way around because of their drone warfare expertise. Of course, this doesn't necessarily mean they've won, and it certainly doesn't mean that the horrors of this war, in which Russia has killed hundreds of thousands of innocent Ukrainians, are over. But it does mean that the weak-kneed enablers of Russia's military aggression here in the US, who started with a pile of motivated reasoning bullshit, have now had it like Biff Tannen in Back to the Future. That's the best and most deserved kind of boomerang.